Именем Аллаха Милостивого Милосердного.
أنا نشكر المجموعة الرؤية الاستراتيجية روسيا والعالم العربي والعالم الإسلامي وخاصة إدارة السفير الدبلوماسي المخضرم بوبوف.
I would like to thank the hosts who invited us here and Mr. Popov in the first place, and also thank all the delegates to this conference, all people who are making statements and who are listening to our statements. And this is all very useful for us. We are benefiting from the current discussion, from the previous discussion. And in the time period between the two conferences, I took several trips and talked to several colleagues. There is no doubt that the mass media problem and the method of their work are important. We must remember that mass media in the past were either of communist character, of totalitarian character, but the situation has changed, has radically changed, especially in the past 2 or 3 decades. I must say that many mass media agencies have borrowed new methods of work, but brainwashing and the accusations are still typical for some mass media agencies or channels. That's why mass media work should be analyzed not only from the religious point of view, but from the political and social point of view. Because many mass media sources are quite closed. But we must remember that extremist tendencies did not emerge from nowhere. But there are forces who, in fact, govern these processes. And we must say that Salafi thoughts, Wahhabite thoughts, and others have been implanted into public mentality for some time already. And these are people who not necessarily support these ideas. So what is important is to identify those who manage these processes in order to fight more successfully this campaign. We must understand that for this activity, financial support is required, coming from sheikhs, emirs, rulers. Some of this assistance comes from Saudi Arabia. We don't want to blame specific states, but talking about the realities, we can't avoid doing this. These ideas are introduced into education programs as well. Statistics show that about 40% of the militants of ISIS are Saudi Arabian citizens, and they receive remuneration from Saudi Arabia. 60% of the young people from Saudi Arabia interviewed are ready to join ISIS. That's the kind of education which they receive thanks to Vefagh, which are announced in their mosques. 25% of the militants in ISIS are foreign citizens. And the attacks in Brussels and Paris only bore out this reality. I have prepared a PowerPoint presentation. It will take up 4 or 5 minutes, and I will show to you some real facts, real methods used by ISIS. the propaganda machinery of ISIS. I'm going to show this to you. So we see that at present ISIS is the most important and the most dangerous terrorist organization. It has about 18 branches. A research was carried out based on the social research, which shows that there are professionals involved in the brainwashing process. The organization is connected with Al-Qaeda. About 200 articles have been published by them recently. They have a TV channel of their own, which provides TV coverage of their policy and of their events. They also have a paper version. They advertise. They also have some advertisements in their channel. So they have quite a number of printed sources. But whatever the names of the publications, they have one common objective. They also have a TV channel, and our colleagues have already mentioned it. They show films of with religious content, also some charity purposes. And these materials are broadcast either in individual territories, but also beyond them. There are special programs for women, for truck drivers, for children, and so on. We must say that ISIS has elaborated a strategy of its own, with the final objective is the establishment of the Islamic Caliphate. And this information material is prepared and broadcast for countries all over the world. They also contain appeals to young Muslims to be recruited and to serve the Islamic Caliphate. They depict the image of an enemy, and these enemies are infidels, crusaders, and that's an important element of their campaign, as well as the use of psychological warfare. This information is destructive, disruptive in nature. That's real brainwashing. Such mass media sources justify terrorist activity, anti-human acts. Other sources of mass media also contribute to this activity in the sphere of information, in the information space. and many of other mass media agencies promote the objectives of ISIS. Financial sources of ISIS and the other sources of support for ISIS. This problem is also important. It's important to identify these support sources, and they include illegal, unlawful oil sales, help coming from United Arab Emirates, Oman, and Saudi Arabia, as well as a number of public organizations. So help comes from the United States of America, from Turkey, and other Arab countries. ISIS militants have already received $1.5 billion of dollars from oil from the so-called donations. The ISIS budget on propaganda amounts to $3 billion. And it has the most advanced information technologies. And this technology comes from Turkey. One of the branches of ISIS spent on this IT close to $5 million. Journalists who work in ISIS mass media sources receive high fees, high salaries. Films which show how people are heads are cut off also are made at a huge expense. This is the Dabik magazine, which is published in 15 languages, and the circulation is quite large. There is another publication called Al Bayan, and its publication is quite expensive, about $9 million. Well, ISIS has a whole army of journalists and unpaid people who support mass media activity. That's one of the reasons why ISIS can respond quite fast to all information events. We'll be able to show you other films connected or just related to this problem.